Deep within the California woods, shrouded in an eerie silence, stood a dilapidated cabin. It was a place forgotten by time, where sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy of ancient trees. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a testament to the secrets the forest held. This was no ordinary woodland retreat. It was a place where the shadows whispered and the silence screamed. The cabin itself seemed to sag under the weight of unseen burdens, its windows like vacant eyes staring out into the endless expanse of trees. The woods surrounding the cabin were a labyrinth of tangled undergrowth and gnarled branches, a testament to nature's untamed power. They held an unsettling beauty, a mesmerizing allure that drew the unsuspecting deeper into their embrace. But beneath the surface, a darkness lurked. A sense of foreboding permeated the air, as if the very trees themselves held their breath, waiting for nightfall and the horrors it would bring.
Can you believe we found this place? It's perfect.
Just wait till you see the cabin, Em. It's totally off the grid.
Are you sure we shouldn't have waited until morning?
Come on, Soph, don't tell me you're scared. It's kind of creepy, even for me.
Come on, let's check it out. Right, let's get this place cleaned up. We can make it cozy.
We should start a fire. It's getting cold.
Let's get this party started.
Remember that awful horror movie we watched?
Yeah, and you spent the entire time hiding behind your popcorn.
Internal thought. She and Emily had been inseparable since childhood, but lately a distance had grown between them. Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that she was holding something back, a secret that threatened to shatter their fragile peace.
Don't worry, Soph, it's going to be a great weekend, just what we all need.
So, who's up for a ghost story?
Maybe not. It's a little too quiet out here for my liking.
Launching into story, a group of hikers vanished without a trace in the very woods surrounding the cabin.
Come on, Ryan, you're not scaring anyone.
And they say their screams can still be heard echoing through the woods to this day.
Okay, Ryan, you win. That was creepy.
Don't worry, Em, it's just a story.
Maybe we should play a different game. Something a little less intense.
Truth or dare it is, then.
I'm in! What about you guys? Don't tell me you're all too chicken.
The suggestion of a lighter game broke the tension that had settled over the group. Ryan, ever eager for a good time, rubbed his hands together mischievously. Emily, relieved to shift the mood, readily agreed. One by one, the others reluctantly agreed, each with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Even Sophie, despite her earlier apprehension, found herself drawn into the spirit of the game. As the game progressed, secrets were revealed, and old wounds were reopened. Innocent truths turned into uncomfortable confessions, and playful dares escalated into acts of reckless abandon. The cabin, once a place of refuge, began to feel like a pressure cooker, the air thick with unspoken tensions and long-buried resentments.
All right, Jakey boy, truth or dare?
Dare?
I dare you to go out into the woods, alone, and bring back a piece of wood from that old tree we saw on the way in.
Ryan, that's not funny. It's pitch black out there.
Relax, Em, it's just a few trees. I'll be back in a flash.
The game of truth or dare reached a fever pitch when Ryan, emboldened by a string of dares, challenged Jake. Jake, never one to back down from a challenge, met Ryan's gaze with unwavering confidence. A slow grin spread across Ryan's face. He pointed towards the window beyond which the forest loomed, dark and menacing. Emily immediately protested, her voice laced with concern, her gaze fixed on Jake's face, searching for any sign of hesitation. But Jake, his pride on the line, brushed off her concerns. He stood up, his movements betraying a hint of bravado he didn't entirely feel. Ignoring Emily's protests, Jake strode towards the door, the weight of the others' gazes heavy upon him. As he stepped out into the darkness, the laughter and chatter from inside the cabin faded into an uneasy silence. The only sound was the mournful sigh of the wind as it whipped through the trees, a harbinger of the darkness that awaited him in the heart of the woods. The cold night air hit Jake like a physical blow as he stepped outside. The laughter and warmth of the cabin seemed miles away, replaced by an oppressive silence broken only by the rustle of leaves underfoot. He took a deep breath, the sharp scent of pine needles filling his lungs. The darkness seemed to press in on him, suffocating, and he felt a prickle of unease crawl up his spine. He quickened his pace, his eyes struggling to adjust to the gloom. The trees loomed around him like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The wind moaned through the leaves, whispering secrets in a language he couldn't understand. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, a frantic drumbeat against the backdrop of the night. He stumbled over a fallen branch, cursing under his breath. The sound of his own voice, sharp and loud in the stillness, startled him. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a primal instinct urging him to turn back, to seek the safety of the cabin and the company of his friends. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The silence inside the cabin grew heavier, punctuated by Emily's increasingly frantic pacing and the occasional nervous cough from the others. Just when their anxiety reached a fever pitch, the sound they had been both longing for and dreading shattered the stillness. It wasn't Jake's voice calling out a greeting. It wasn't the sound of his footsteps on the porch. It was the sound of the cabin door creaking open, slowly, as if pushed by an unseen hand. Emily froze mid-stride, her breath catching in her throat. The others, equally transfixed, watched in horrified silence as the door swung open, revealing nothing but the impenetrable darkness beyond. A cold gust of wind swept into the cabin, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and cloying. Emily, Jake, is that you? The shadows in the cabin seemed to deepen, closing in on them like suffocating hands. Sara, her face unreadable in the flickering firelight, remained silent. She stood apart from the others, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond the open door. A shiver ran down Emily's spine. Sara's unnatural stillness was more unnerving than Ryan's blustering bravado.
He's gone. There's no sign of him anywhere.
What do? We don't even have cell service out here. We're all alone.
The weight of their isolation pressed down on them, heavy and suffocating. They were trapped in a nightmare, hunted by an unseen predator in the depths of the unforgiving wilderness. Fear, sharp and primal, crackled in the air between them, fueling their suspicions and turning their once unbreakable bond into a tangled web of doubt.
We stick together. We have to look out for each other. That's all we can do.
But even as she spoke, her gaze darted from one face to another, searching for answers, for reassurance, for any sign that they weren't already falling apart. The hours that followed were a blur of fear and suspicion. They huddled together in the main room, the fire their only source of light and warmth, their faces pale and drawn in the flickering flames. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside the windows sent shivers down their spines. Emily, consumed by worry for Jake, paced restlessly, her mind racing with terrifying possibilities. Ryan, haunted by his dare, sank into a sullen silence, his guilt and fear a tangible presence in the room. Sophie, desperately trying to hold on to her composure, found herself looking at her friends with new eyes, questioning everything she thought she knew about them. And then there was Sara. She remained apart from the others, her silence more unnerving than any outburst of grief or anger. Her eyes, dark and unreadable, seemed to follow their every move, her silence a constant, unsettling presence. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Sara knew something, that she held the key to Jake's disappearance and the terrifying truth lurking in the shadows of their weekend getaway. The weight of unspoken words, of half-hidden truths and long-buried secrets, settled over them like a shroud. They were no longer just friends trapped in a nightmare. They were strangers, bound together by fear and suspicion, each haunted by their own demons, and the growing certainty that the real danger lay not in the darkness outside, but in the secrets they held within. The first rays of dawn, filtering through the grimy windows, painted the cabin interior in a sickly gray light. The remnants of the fire smoldered in the hearth, offering little comfort against the chill that had seeped into the very bones of the cabin. Emily, her eyes red-rimmed and her face stained with tears, rose from her sleepless vigil by the window. She stretched, her stiff muscles protesting, and a wave of exhaustion washed over her. But even as fatigue threatened to drag her under, a new wave of terror, cold and sharp, jolted her fully awake. There, on the worn floorboards, just visible beneath the edge of the rug, was a dark, irregular stain. She dropped to her knees, her heart pounding in her chest like a frantic drum. It was blood, dried blood, dark and ominous. The sight of it sent a fresh wave of nausea through her. Jake. It had to be Jake's blood.
Ryan, Sophie, Sara, come here quick.
Her voice, hoarse from lack of sleep and choked with terror, echoed through the silent cabin.
What is that? Whose blood is that?
It's Jake's, isn't it? He's dead. He's really dead.
This is all my fault. I dared him to go out there. I should have stopped him.
Sara, what do you know about this? You've been acting strange all weekend. Tell me what you know.
Me? I don't know anything. Why are you looking at me like that?
Don't lie to me. You're involved in this, aren't you? You know what happened to Jake.
Maybe I do. But then again, maybe you already know the truth, Emily. Maybe you've known all along.
What are you talking about?
Oh, Emily, don't you remember it was all your fault?
Michael.
The cabin, once a sanctuary of shared laughter and secrets, now echoed with the weight of unspoken truths. Emily, her face ashen, stared at the bloodstain on the floor, her mind a maelstrom of fear and guilt. The pieces of the puzzle, scattered and fragmented, were finally falling into place, revealing a picture far more horrifying than she could have ever imagined. Sara, her confession spoken, seemed to deflate, her earlier energy replaced by a weary resignation. She sank onto a nearby chair, her gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the cabin walls.
It's done. It's finally over.
Ryan, his face pale and drawn, stared at Sara with a mixture of horror and disbelief.
Why? Why did you do it?
They deserved it.
But the words held no triumph, no satisfaction, only the hollow echo of a pain that ran too deep for tears. The police arrived as the sun began its final descent, casting long, menacing shadows across the clearing. They found Emily sitting alone on the porch steps, her eyes fixed on the distant tree line, her face a mask of grief and exhaustion. The weight of the truth, a crushing burden she would carry for the rest of her days, had settled upon her, silencing the laughter and stealing the light from her eyes. The cabin stood silent, a lonely sentinel in the gathering gloom, its secrets swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Nightfall had come, and with it, a silence more profound, more unsettling than any scream.